Since the dawn of history, man has looked up at the night sky and wondered if intelligent life might exist on other worlds besides his own. As astronomy developed, the concept of the existence of life on other worlds began to acquire some scientific basis. Many of the early Greek philosophers taught that our Earth was not the sole dwelling place of intelligent life. This is not a science fiction program, but one in which scientists speculate and state their case seriously.
Nature doesn't do things in ones and twos. She's not mean. There are millions of planets, millions of stars and millions of galaxies, and very likely up there, millions of other different kinds of intelligent creatures.
We put this together, and last year I think was a bit of a surprise as to how well it was received, and we had a fantastic panel last year, as we have had again this year. 2 are returners and 2 are new. And we hope to encourage other people. Now, hopefully some of you came to Cosmic Conversations, which was the session, a new session that we did during the day. A bit lower turnout, obviously, because it's just sort of one-off sessions, and we're trying to get the momentum going. There is also an art installation at the Moot Hall, which I think you were told about. There was something happening at the Community Centre today, but that will not be happening tomorrow. That was just a one-off. But what we do have, and I think I mentioned it earlier, enough plugging, Steve gave me a bit of plugging, which is that we do have a showing of 2 films tomorrow. These are both exclusive, starting at 11 o'clock here. So please do give that some thought about coming on to that. The film, which I've seen, Rendezvous in the Future, which was produced by Steve Singh to my left, former BBC colleague of mine, is an absolutely fantastic, glossy, landmark production, just as you have always done, Steve, as is your signature filmmaking style, and is a really, really interesting watch, especially because it is a lot of the narrative with Saoirse Liu, who wrote the 3-Body Opera. So a lot of his thinking behind what was going into the books, I think would be fair to say, went into that documentary, and Steve will be doing a brief Q&A after that, so please think about coming to that. And then we have the UFOs of Sosterberg. So if you were here earlier, you will see Graham Rendle sitting there and waving his hand, who produced a fantastic film around a particular incident period in Netherlands history. It is English, it's subtitled in English, isn't it? But it is Dutch language.
I categorically believe we are not alone in the universe, but I also categorically believe we have never been visited by aliens.
Controversial. I believe we're not alone in the universe. Out of that transpires open-minded, and we're very open-minded about having been visited before. I'd like to think that Egypt was built by aliens, but that's just in my fantasy.
I hate the A word. Every time I've been interviewed on podcasts, and there's quite a few hundred now, I try and steer away from it because I don't think that's kind of fair. Somebody once said that people have said that maybe they're just us from the future and they've invented time travel. So, or they're what we call ultra-terrestrials, which they're here already, and we just can't see them for some strange reason. Or maybe some of us can. And, there's 2 strands there. Or they're from somewhere else. Any of those things could be right or not. It could be something we haven't worked out yet. So, I'm on the fence. I've got a sore backside from sitting on the fence. And if you've read any of my books, you'll know that I don't tell you what to think. I just write things down and say, look, you make your own mind up. So this is me sitting on the fence again. Sorry, Bill.
That's right. Daniela.
I'm also a believer. What can I say? I think in I don't know what form we will find out at some point whether we are alone or not. I don't know how. If maybe it will be microbial life on Europa, or really we might receive some kind of radio signal or optical signal from somewhere. So I think I'm optimistic. I don't know when. I think maybe in the far future. But
investigative journalists, such as the time when I work with Steve, but I do hypothesize about things, and you mentioned it, Graham, which is that this idea that AI has somehow worked out how to time travel, and if AI exists in the future, that actually what's coming back and visiting us is not even humans, it's we've been replaced, and it's computers and AI that are coming back and teasing us in all their randomness. So I'm not saying that's the case. All right, this is going to be a little bit like question time, except for Nigel Farage isn't here. There's a smile on your face, and I know why you chose it. There we go. But to play us out, I'm assuming it's Pale Blue Dot. So please, can we welcome to the stage Pale Blue Dot. We will also retire and play us out. And thank you very much indeed. Hopefully, see you again next year. Thank you.
3 million miles away from us. And the sun is, it's a good job it's 93 million miles away from us, because it's really big and dangerous and awful. It's a little under 1 million miles in diameter, so you could fit the Earth across it 109 times. Inside it, closer to 1.3 million times. And it's hot, 5,500 degrees on its surface. A million degrees or so, a few million degrees in fact, as you start to get deeper inside. But what's it doing? Why is it different to a planet? Well, first off, we could say it's producing lots of energy. It's doing this thing that we call fusion. We're not going to dig too much into that because we haven't got time for it. It's doing fusion inside, which is producing a reasonable place to go to. And many years ago, it was thought that Mars was inhabited. When telescopes started to get bigger, people thought, oh, we can see some activity on Mars. There's definitely life on Mars. Thing is, Mars does look active if you look at it through a telescope without very good resolution, because it experiences dust storms. And so those clouds appear and the surface starts to change. It could almost look a little bit like fauna growing and then decaying. It's also got polar ice caps which shrink and increase in size. It's a wonderful planet, but it definitely doesn't look like, from the surface, that there's anything immediately obvious that there's life on Mars. When we got there in the 70s, big dry desert, not an interesting place for life. But there is still that open question. I'm always very open to this, is that maybe there is something still living underneath the surface of Mars. Because as we've learned about from Earth, there's many different conditions that life can adapt itself to. Is there something which has moved deeper into Mars and is still there, living in some really interesting conditions, which are safer than being on the surface, where the atmosphere has been stripped away? Or is it that somewhere like the icy moons of Jupiter and Saturn are the places that will find life? Places like that have incredible conditions deep within them, warm oceans, places very similar to how the Earth may have been when life started to emerge here on Earth, where minerals are mixing with water and becoming life. That's probably where I think my money would be. And I think we're really, really close to finding it as well. There's some incredible missions on the way to Jupiter now to have a look at these icy moons to find out whether or not there is life on those moons. I think we're really, really close. But then moving a little bit further away, are we just one solar system and the only solar system in the universe? Was Giordano Bruno right? Absolutely, I said that just before there. Whether this exists or not, we don't know. Look at the brightness of the star, and then that starts to reveal slightly fainter objects that surround it. And in this case, what this image shows here is on the left-hand side there is a very, very bright planet, and then on the other side is a slightly dimmer planet. And that one on the left is about 10 times the size of Jupiter, 10 times the mass of Jupiter, sorry. And the one on the right there is only a couple of times the mass of Jupiter, but still very, very big planets. And big planets are the ones that are going to be immediately obvious by using this technique. But it only works up to a certain distance right now as well, because here on Earth, well, big telescopes are looking through atmosphere, resolution is limited right now. So how else would we find planets other than just physically seeing them? Well, there's a method that I want to just quickly go through, which is called transit method, which involves looking at the light that you get from a star and then watching it for a period of time until you see a little fluctuation in that brightness. And that fluctuation in the brightness means that perhaps a planet is going around that star and has come between you, your apparatus, and that star. And you can watch for these characteristic signals time and time again. You wouldn't just see it once and go, oh yeah, there's a planet. You might do it time and time again, look at some data for a longer period. One of those stars is hotter than the other. Which one? The blue one, which feels unusual to many people. Why is the blue star hotter than the red star? That's not the case on my taps at all. Unless it's messed up. But it's certainly the case with stars, and it certainly is the case with flames. And you'll know this if you are, like myself, at school, one of those people who, if you have Bunsen burner on, you got a lovely yellow flame and you're running your hand through it like this, and then you turn the oxygen in, and then layers of skin come off, and it's all messy anyway. Don't do that. This is why. Light's travelling as waves. And down at this left-hand side, we've got very long wavelengths of light, radio waves. That's what's making my microphone work right now, connected to wherever it's connected to. And then next to that, we've got microwaves, which is how satellites communicate. Very safe, radio waves, microwaves. Not if you stick your head in a microwave oven, that's not what I'm suggesting here, but they are very safe, don't worry about them too much. And then we've got infrared. Now infrared we are a little bit sensitive to because we can feel it and we also produce it as well. If I switch off all the lights in this room, I'd still see you because you'd be producing infrared light. And then in the middle, we've got that little visible light spectrum which starts at red, goes through to violet. And then off the other end we've got ultraviolet. We don't want that. That's not very good for us, this ultraviolet. It helps our skin mutate and create complexities that can become dangerous to us. Then we've got X-rays, which are very useful, but there's a reason why the radiologist is stood behind a concrete wall. And it's because every day if they were getting an X-ray, that would make them feel very sick. Pilots get X-ray poisoning over long careers because of exposure to X-ray light from the sun. And then we've got gamma radiation, or gamma waves, right at the very top. If anybody's seen the TV series Chernobyl, you'll know that it melts skin. That stuff is not good. It's really, really awful stuff, is gamma radiation. So as you can see, we've moved from stuff that doesn't really hit light, the Transiting Exoplanet Survey satellite, which is looking for these things. But as you can see, there's also disk kinematics, pulsation for timing variations, astrometry. All these are the different methods of looking for planets and have been successful. And you'll notice some peaks there as well. That's where there's been a big data dump from a satellite called Kepler as well. So then how do we understand about the atmosphere? So just to finish up, now we have the telescope, the James Webb Space Telescope in space. It's able to glance through the atmosphere of planets as they transit. So as that planet moves in front of its star, a little bit of sunlight passes through that planet's atmosphere, and then we can do the spectroscopy that we looked at before. We can find out the chemical makeup of that atmosphere. And the kind of things that we're looking for are things like dimethyl sulfide, oxygen, ozone, methane, a mixture of all of these different things. But that only really tells us that those planets are a little bit like Earth. It doesn't really tell us whether or not those planets do have the potential to harbour any other type of life. Because remember, when we're looking for life, we're only looking for life that's like us. How do we know to look for life that isn't like us if we don't know it doesn't exist, if we don't know it exists? That's really hard. Looking for something that you don't know is possible makes it really difficult. And I think this is where our biggest stumbling block is. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with a number now, which is this. This is 100 sextillion, which a few years ago someone romanticized this number as being approximately 10 times the amount of grains of sand on our planet. So every little grain of sand on our planet, times it by 10, that's that number. That's the amount of visible stars that we can see from Earth using all of our instruments right now. Around every star, we think there's approximately 5 planets. So times it by 5, and you get lots. And that's my final thoughts. Thank you so much for listening to me.
Unidentified flying objects, UFOs. Some people say they've seen them. Animal lover Joe Simonton, ex-professional boxer, Deputy Sheriff, Wisconsin. He showed me the pancake given him by the flying saucer men. These were two Devon policemen who chased a flying saucer across Dartmoor at 90 miles an hour. Barney and Betty Hill, who eventually revealed under hypnosis the most extraordinary flying saucer story of them all.
What about the explanations which have been offered in the press and elsewhere?
I give no credence to them.
And you, Roger?
I think if somebody could give us some good logical explanation for what it was, then probably we might be able to accept it. Things are sent from this world into outer space, and there should be a rational explanation of where they end up. Sometimes there is no rational explanation, and I've had people, ordinary people, say to me, well, it's obvious, you know, that if we send stuff up there, that they can send stuff down to us. It's not beyond the realms of possibility, I don't think.
I agree with the scientists who've written off unidentified flying objects as a nonsense problem without a meaningful solution.
In each age, there are certain things that are, you might say, admitted onto the playing field of science, and that varies with each age. And there were times certainly when hypnotism wasn't admitted on the playing field of science, or circulation of the blood, or bacterial cause of disease. So all these things were laughed at.
Hynek is a man of considerable scientific reputation. After all, he designed the American satellite tracking system. But even he wasn't immune from the ridicule shown to anyone interested in the unexplained.
A colleague will say, well, what are you monkeying with this nonsense for? I say, well, how do you dare talk about these things if you haven't read the data, if you are not acquainted with the data? This is not scientific. I think myself that UFOs represent new empirical observations. And I simply cannot hold, after the 20 years experience, that all UFO reports can be explained as misperception, misidentifications, or hallucination.
There's never been any life on Mars. That's a very surprising fact, because it looks as though Mars may have been quite benign a few million years ago, or a few billion years ago.
But I wonder whether life had time to evolve there before conditions became impossible.
It begins to look as though life can evolve very rapidly if conditions are at all favourable. When you consider the incredible variety of life on this Earth, it's obviously impossible to speculate usefully about life on any other planet. I mean, who could have imagined the giraffe, the giant squid, the whale, or indeed, if you take a dispassionate viewpoint, us? Since on this one planet, in a relatively uniform environment, nature has done such fantastic things, and on planets that are very much hotter, or very much colder, or have different chemical constituents, then life could take almost any imaginable form.
Perfectly true, and I just wonder, you know, whether some of these more bizarre life forms that must exist here and there would be recognizable to us. What do you think?
It's quite possible that they might be totally unrecognizable. Of course, some of them might even be what we would call spiritual. It might be patterns of energy, or even patterns of light, not necessarily physical bodies at all. I know this is going really far into speculation. I suspect that most really advanced intelligences, though, will be electronic, mechanical, in other words, the successors of our computers. In fact, I think what we're doing now is to build our own successors.
Terminology is called a UFO, an unidentified flying object. The sound was a whirring, whining howl, like a... That was the sound it made. After the event, then we thought, what if it hadn't have stopped descending? We'd have been mush underneath it, quite honestly.
You've drawn a picture of what it looked like, haven't you? Can I just have a look at it so we can...
With pleasure.
Get an indication. So that's the object there, is it?
That is the object.
Yeah. Are you a particularly gullible person, or, you know, were you cynical about this kind of thing before you saw it?
Let's put it this way. Any man who's not open-minded is a fool.
When Didier Queloz set his computer software to work on the data, the analysis suggested 51 peg was changing speed.
In fact, the first reaction that you have at that time is, oh, something is wrong with the experiment. and you observe it again the day after and the day after, and then it was more and more awful because it was moving every day. And you say, all right, there is really a big problem with the experiment.
Every visit to the observatory gave them more data, and eventually a pattern emerged. When they looked at the graph as a whole, it showed a wobble.
After months of observations, they had all the proof they needed. And in October 1995, announced their discovery. The team had found the first planet outside of our solar system, orbiting a sun-like star.
Greenhouse effect on Venus hundreds of millions or even billions of years ago, and as a result of that, the surface is now incredibly hot. But the clouds, and this was realised I think in the 1960s by Carl Sagan, when you go really high up, so about 50 kilometres up, the pressure in the clouds is like it is at the surface of the Earth, and the temperature is actually like 20 or 30 centigrade, so it's really quite habitable. The thinking behind this is perhaps Venus was habitable much like the Earth, but a long time ago, billions of years ago, as this runaway greenhouse effect happened, some of the smaller life was able to float up into the sky, essentially, and survive and develop new ways of living up there.
Astronomers have found weird things before and said maybe this might be a sign of life. In this case, obviously it's not definitive, but you said, okay, this is an experiment. If we find this, it might well be a biosignature. We'll look for it, and we found it.
We've done exactly what you're supposed to do in science. Predicted the thing, gone out and looked for the thing. The surprise was finding the thing.
Committee for the past 11 years, and in a way this is the background to this project which I'm going to present today, which is called A Sign in a Space. It's a big project that could be interpreted in many different ways. I give different talks about this project because there are different angles, different perspectives. And one of the perspectives I'd like to introduce is this project as a form of cosmic theater. However, today I'm going to delve into other aspects of the project. First of all, what is a sign in space? Having been part of the SETI research team for a very long time, I realized that one of their questions is where is everybody, of course, and also how do we detect extraterrestrial intelligence. And one of the scenarios that astronomers imagine is that we might receive a radio signal or an optical signal using, for example, radio observatories in the case of radio signals. So the search happens primarily at the moment using these radio telescopes that scan the sky looking for radio signals that are produced by an extraterrestrial intelligence, so clearly not of a natural origin. And this scenario has been playing out in my mind for a very long time, and at some point I decided to stage it in real time. So I imagined that through theater we could recreate a scenario which presented the arrival of a signal, a radio signal from space, and the signal also is received by different radio telescopes on Earth. And in the case of this project I created, the data of the signal are shared in the public domain as opposed as remaining hidden just in the scientific labs. So this was a very ambitious project that took me more than 4 years to implement, and it became a large collaboration with some of the the facilities and the scientific institutions that are most involved in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, including the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia, which was the radio telescope that we saw in the last clip, the Italian National Institute for Astrophysics, the SETI Institute, and the European Space Agency, as well as a panel of specialists from different fields, including anthropology, sociology, philosophy, and a lot of other fields. Sorry, what happened? I'm not sure. Did I press the wrong button? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So the title comes from a book which I highly recommend. It has been translated in many languages. This is the first version to be published. It's the Cosmic Omega by Italian novelist Italo Calvino. And Calvino was inspired in his writing by science, so he used to really follow very close. Was asked, how could we decode a message from extraterrestrials? And she gave a really interesting answer. She says, give it to every adult and every child on the planet who wants it. Toss it to the dolphins and whales. Show it to the other primates. And we need to encourage people to express that data in all kinds of ways. In strings of ones and zeros, in grids, using different pitches of sound with colored lights, played backwards, interpreted as instructions for origami, expressed in beadwork or knotted threads, or in mosaics made of M and M's. And we should do this because we can have no idea how it was meant to be interpreted. And the very worst thing we can do is to leave it to professionals to fuss over. It will be a glorious all-hands-on-deck cacophony of thought and conjecture. And I'm reading this quote because it is exactly what happened with the message that we designed for Exile in Space. It has been really interpreted in precisely all these kinds of ways, plus many. This is also extremely challenging. We have extreme limitations already communicating among each other. And we find it extremely difficult to communicate with other species. I experienced that just yesterday when I got assaulted by a dog on my face. I interpreted the body language of the dog as a relaxed body language, but in truth, she was very uneasy with me touching her. So it's incredibly difficult to communicate with even terrestrial species. How can we assign meanings to something so detached from our terrestrial experience and possibly beyond our cognitive abilities? How can we communicate with a life that has evolved on another celestial body with completely different environmental features? So do they have the same sensorial organs that we have, and so many other questions. So ultimately, this project is about the limits of knowledge in our communication and understanding. In order to make this possible, I brought together professionals that I met over the years, have been involved with space scientists for the past 2 decades. So I built a very diverse and global network. And I kind of brought together all these people I knew, and so I created some 4 teams, the science team, including scientists from the Bank Observatory, the Allen Telescope Array, which is the telescope of the SETI Institute, and the Institute for Radio for Astrophysics in project from 2019. The first step was actually testing this project with a satellite company which is called The Orbit, and they agreed to make a test by transmitting the Arecibo message using this satellite which is orbiting Earth at 500 kilometer altitude. But, okay. Anyway, they transmitted the Arecibo message back to Earth, and it was received at 2 radio telescopes, the Cervinia radio telescope in Italy and also the Medicina radio antenna in Italy. So they both received the Arecibo message, and this is the signal reception with the Doppler shift. The phase 2 was when ESA joined the project and agreed to use one of their spacecraft for transmitting the message towards Earth. At the same time, I was awarded a fellowship at the Green Bank Observatory, so they also became a partner of the project. And finally, the SETI Institute joined as well. So it took a few years just to create the actual scientific network, and also during this stage we conducted several tests with the spacecraft we used for the project, which is orbiting Mars and like gathering data from the Martian surface. So we conducted a few tests between March and May 2023, and this is the signal reception at the various facilities and some of the specialists in the team that were working in the project. Never really far.